Okay, I wanted to start with one of my favorite radio journalists. They're actually a team, the Kitchen Sisters. Anyone heard of the Kitchen Sisters before? Oh, you guys are in for a treat. Well, the Kitchen Sisters are award-winning radio producers. A lot of their stuff goes to KQED and others. And they also teach over at Berkeley's Masters in Journalism. So this is from a series that they did called The Making Of. It was profiling different people making stuff in the Bay Area. They're in the Bay Area here. And they also, once in a while, it's rare, so keep your eyes out for it, but they do teach like a 3-day seminar in how to do the type of work that they're doing. So it's a longer form radio features, longer than I asked you for, and so I haven't played this just to avoid confusion because we want to stay on point and just show you stuff that we're expecting that you'll do things like this in class. But these are real treats, so check this out.
Radiotopia from PRX.
So I'm going to ask you afterwards your impressions.
Welcome to Fugitive Waves. Lost recordings, shards of sound, along with new tales from around the world and down the street. Stories from the flip side of history. We're the Kitchen Sisters. I'm Nikki Silva.
I'm Davia Nelson. We have a saying in the Kitchen Sisters shop: say everything out loud. Whatever you're looking for, tell everyone, and that's how you'll find it. The making of the Bay Bridge, the making of a jar of jam, the making of the iPhone, an opera, a surfboard. The Kitchen Sisters and KQED are launching a new series, The Making of. What people make in the Bay Area and why. What are you making? How about your grandmother? Your neighbor, the guy you sit next to at work? Call our listener phone line and tell us your story. 415-553-3362. That's 415-553-3362. The Making of, coming soon to KQED.
We opened up a phone line on KQED-FM in San Francisco and posed the question.
You have 87 new messages.
Calls came pouring in.
I make the future. I'm helping to write a law to switch San Francisco to a 100% solar-powered society within the next 10 years.
We make hand-built chicken coops in Petaluma, California.
We really don't know what each other makes. Our income, it's like this invisible elephant in the room. We never talk about what we make, and yet we're all living in sort of a different world.
I built probably about 30,000 surfboards.
We were in the midst of this hunt when we got a tip from Armistead Maupin. Armistead wrote Tales of the City, a column, the series of books, the TV series. He helped on the musical. Tales of the City, one of the first and most iconic stories of a young gay man coming out in San Francisco. Armistead was the one who told us about Lenny Breedlove and the Homobile. In fact, it was Armistead who sent Lenny Breedlove to us one day when we were late for the airport, had to make a flight, and were starting to panic. Panic ye not, said Armistead. The Homobile is on the way. Lenny pulled the Homobile up to the curb outside our office with seconds to spare. We were uptight, and so was Lenny. Let's just say it was not love at first sight. Can we go all the way down to the park?
You don't want to go on Harrison?
I like that ball parkway, and just because it's pretty and if you don't mind.
Okay.
Just give me a sec. This is being changed around a bit. Just trying to find.
Where's your volunteers?
I want to drive. I have a car. I have 4 doors.
Sorry, Chow?
In San Francisco.
Avant-garde.
Yeah, okay. So they've repackaged all the original reports for podcasts, which is the case here with all that lead in and stuff.
And of course, you just want to.
Okay, it sort of starts around here, I guess. I should have just let it play, but I was getting kind of worried.
Civil rights and glitter.
Who took the bomb?
Hey, Homobiles, it's Lenny. 859 Union. Yeah, hey, could you text me that? One babe, one bag, going to Espo. I will give it to the driver, and they'll be there in about 10 minutes.
I was having a hair appointment. I was getting my hair blown out at Dina's Glamorama. My friend said, Lenny Breedlove has started Homobile. Call if you need a ride. And so I told them where I was and I needed a car. They sent, I think it was Musty Chiffon. Yes, it was Musty Chiffon. She showed up and was my driver. So all of a sudden, this person who I'd known in clubs, we were driving in a car and talking with each other. They ask for a suggested donation. And of course, you just want to give them the entire contents of your pocketbook because they're so lovely.
See what I tell you? Traffic. My name is Lenny Breedlove. I run Homobiles, a community ride service for the LGBTIQQ LMNOPQRST community and its allies in San Francisco. You do not have to be a big fat queer to get a ride from Homobiles, but it does help. No, just kidding. But you need to understand that the real reason that we are here is for people that don't get rides normally from anyone else. And so you're putting on all this padding, high heels, a wig, and 3 sets of false eyelashes, and a bunch of glitter. You are high priority at Homobiles.
First I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights.
My name is Godiva Chocolatier. We're at the Stud in San Francisco, and right now you're seeing me in my night drag. I'm wearing gold lame pants and a platinum wig and lots of fabulous makeup. At nighttime when I go out, and this is how I look, you know, fabulous and avant-garde, not a cab will take me.
Are you Grant? How are you? Where are you headed to?
Wisconsin 25th.
My name is Becca Schertzer. We're driving in my Toyota Tacoma truck, which also doubles as a homobile because of drag queens, sex workers, trans folks, queers not being picked up, given a hard time, harassed. It was really important for us to get our folks around safely.
I had a band called Tribe 8, and I had a bike messenger company called Lickety Split, all-girl courier in the 90s. And then I had a dog walking company, Uncle Lenny's School for Dogs. I drove all over town picking up dogs. And then it was a moving van called Van Dyke Hauling. And one day I was driving a friend of mine around who's a lady of the night and a trans person. I was dropping her off at some hotel, and I was like, don't you want me to wait? Don't you want to text me in case something weird happens? Don't you want to be the tough guy? So then me and a friend of mine were brainstorming about what I could do. And he's like, well, you got your car, right? Why don't you be that tough guy for the exotic dancers and the what have yous? And then you could call it Ho-mobiles. Get it? Then one day, I was invited to the FEM conference in Oakland. And I showed up, and they were like, oh, a bush with a car. And so I was like, oh, I'll be right back. So I ran down to the nearest do-it-yourself car wash and came back, and I was blasting La Tigra. I was like, I'm so so excited. Was blasting out of the car. Babes were standing on the corner, and they all piled in. There was about 6 hotties who were squeezed into the tiny Mitsubishi. And then I went back and got more and brought them back. And I was like, hey, babes, free rides. By then, drag queens were like, hey, we're femmes. We have high heels. We have big hair. We need rides. And then all the fags were like, yeah. And so did we. And so did everybody suddenly was a homobiler. And that's how it happened.
We have over 20 people that drive their cars. It's all by donation. All the drivers are volunteers.
I want to drive. I have a car. I have 4 doors.
Because I have a truck, I get a lot of performers carrying equipment, drag queens and all their bags and their boys. And a lot of cabs and stuff won't take people with, you know, they don't like glitter in their cabs. They don't like all kinds of bicycles and whatever.
I'm not a big glitter person, but, you know, I wear sequins, so I'm sure I leave sequins in many places. My name's Justin Vivian Bond. I'm a transgenre artist. People get freaked out by glitter, and I don't blame the drivers, because if you get a lot of glitter or makeup or body paint in your car, it's hard to get out. I guess that's one of the drawbacks of the carriage trade.
Women who are like exotic dancers and stuff use this a lot because they don't like cab drivers knowing where they live. They've been propositioned all night for their job. Now they're getting propositioned all the way home. They want silence or at least sweetness, not skeeviness.
I think it is a safety issue, but it's also kind of a civil rights issue because when someone perceives you as presenting a gender that they don't want to accept, then they feel like they have the right to ask you any inappropriate question, and you always have to be on high alert.
It's 1:57, which is the magic hour, and right now the dispatcher is pulling his hair out because he's trying to get 500 queers home with 7 homobiles. That means there's lots of homo shuttling going on right now.
My mom is about to get a ride from Homobiles to the airport tomorrow because you can trust Homobiles.
With your mom?
With my mom. Bye, Mom.
Homobiles International, Homobiles Bombay, Homobiles Bloomington, Homobiles Berlin. Wait a sec. Mo's getting hose where they needs to go. Balin, what's up, dude? Dude, I got the best tag for you. I told you you could be there in 10 minutes. Did I lie?
I'm so excited. I just can't hold it. I'm about to lose control. I think I like it.
That's it. That's the full length of the one that was broadcast. Comes in around 7 minutes. So I have some questions for you about that. What did you find that differed in that type of profile than the one that we wrote, or we're going to write? I know you might have written an event. What was different?
It was more personal, kind of documentary.
Okay, documentary. And what made it documentary-ish?
It's like that's like a Q&A, and it's like more looking into what Homobiles is more about rather than asking. Sure, the guy who made Homobiles presented himself, but it was like more. It's like less of the reporter during that sound bit. If that makes any sense.
It does make a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing we could note here, which is, as you're talking about documentary, you mentioned, what we've been writing is more like a QA. This is more like a documentary. True, this is 100% actualities, right? There's no reporter telling the story. It's all, what we would have called actualities, which is people that have been interviewed and recorded, right? So this is a lot of sound bites, one after the other, which is just what you're saying, Ron. It's a different approach.
And then know me bad, but it's like you get the background of Homobiles, the LGBT community, and then you got something about some background about drivers, like when he talked about glitter, and a lot of people can actually relate with getting glitter out of the car. I thought about it, I was like, well, in fairness, glitter is pretty hard to get off.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you picked up on that. That was going to be my second question. We had talked in the importance about, when we're considering the newsworthiness of a story, we're talking one of our foci, remember FOCII? One of them is impact. How does this affect people? And I think an important part of doing like a profile or an event is to let people know, why is this important? There must be some reason why we should care. It's very entertaining, and I'd like to come back to that, of course, but it's also what Ron has identified is the way that there's built within the story, as entertaining as it is, there's also a justification. Why is this important? Well, as we hear, the driver says, sure, sometimes, I could see why they wouldn't want to pick up performers because of body paint or glitter or whatever might stay in the car. But on the other hand, it's kind of a civil rights issue. Like, somebody needs to be able to get, you need to be able to get a lift or a cab, regardless of whether you're wearing. So who's going to do that? Homobiles is going to do that. It's a safety issue. Performers coming home late at night, they don't want to be harassed, right? So there's another justification in that little section which was, that Ron picked up on. Yeah, sure, maybe they don't pick us up because it could mess up the car, but also they don't pick us up because we're trans, or maybe they do pick us up and they want to harass us and talk to us, inappropriately, or they may even want to find out where we live, which is also dangerous, So it gives a whole reason for why the service is really important, Yep, Fran?
And then there was the but the comment that was made that regarding the safety, they trust these people enough to take their mom to the airport.
Yeah, that's cool too. So it starts to become, how you might see the same cabbie or the same Uber driver once in a while, you get to know people a little bit, but this you just feel like, okay, it's more of a community type of thing going on. And for a community, a loose community that is harassed or mistreated, or, so I think that's a great theme for this story. Can we come back for a second to what made it entertaining and interesting? So we've determined that it was all actualities. Was there anything about those actualities that had particular standout character or entertainment value? The people that we heard from, did they strike you as being interesting in any way?
They did. I guess because I'm very visual, and so I'm hearing these people speak, but I'm visualizing what they may look like. And then they start talking about glitter, or I'm visualizing the cab ride home with an unruly cab driver.
Yeah.
So I picked up on things like that.
That's a really good point. I know you're real visual. That's your camera's right there with you, and I think it's also part of radio in general. Is good radio can get us creating those mental pictures. And so I wrote down the name Justin Vivian Bond, who's he's the one with glitter, the glitter comments, and also the one who starts off the beginning of the piece saying, I was, then they came and picked me up, and I said, was that, what was her name? Brandy Chiffon, I think. Is that Brandy Chiffon who's giving me a ride? I can't believe this, So there was in part the names, the fun stage names of these performers. There's, the way they express themselves with just, fun way of talking, and so, as Fran's saying, we can visualize a ride, we can visualize the people talking to us kind of too, because of the strength of the actualities. And Lenny Breedlove also has, plenty of character in the way that she talks about stuff. Lots of puns, the way she runs through all the punning names of all the different businesses that she started, before she started Homobiles and stuff. So there's a lot of, there's puns, there's fun characters, there's, very kind of evocative imagery. Is there anything else in the audio that you heard that made this entertaining?
The nightlife.
Nightlife? You mean?
I guess not so much. I don't know.
Talk about nightlife, you mean? Or, okay, I think that led to some of the visualizations. And Fran, did you have anything?
I was going to say when they talked about when they were starting up the company, and they had a whole pile of people just try and squish into this little Mazda,
right,
and that
right.
just, I was like, oh, that's
more great, great kind of visual, evocative, yeah. Well, Chow, you like music. What did you think of the music in this one and how it was
pretty
done?
Cool, it's like a lot of episodes in one podcast.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah, it was because this is longer, 5 minutes, you need to kind of steer people's attention. And it's true, they did use music, a few times. Like, for instance, I think it was Justin Vivian Bond who said, you just want to give them the contents of your pocketbook or something like that. Somebody said, I'm so excited. And then boom, 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 in comes the music cue. I'm so excited. And it gets you, moving on to the next thing. And they did that as well to kind of mark out the very last part of the piece where, you know, there was a shift in the music and, you know, Lenny Breedlove started saying, Homobiles Bombay, Homobiles Calcutta, you know. So it was kind of like just kind of more exciting feeling about the future of, which is, you know, typically a story like this might end on, okay, your question was, where is this going? What's going to happen? You know, what's next? That's a typical thing that you guys would ask for an event or a profile. And this kind of covers it in the same notion, but in a really fun and entertaining way. So we've got great characters. We've got a lot of really evocative scenes. We've got wordplay, a lot of puns. Homobile itself is a fun pun. And we've got music as well. And everything is actualities. There's no kind of stuffy reporter coming in to direct us. Yeah, Brent?
I also noticed there was a lot of ambient noise going on.
Yeah.
But it added to the story.
You know, interesting. So the gnat sound of the engine revving up or something like that is also exciting. Yeah, that's true. So that gnat sound is in there. That's what we call it in radio, right? Ambience in video. So that's another thing. Sound effects, music. It's starting to become more like, you know, a multimedia production, which means that it requires, you know, not just the reporters, and they're really good at building up a story like this and doing those interviews, but there was also somebody who was credited just with mixing it. So there's a lot of editing that goes in and a lot of mixing. And this is really challenging because, remember, you're not allowed to intrude as a reporter at all. It's all actuality. So you have to find within your interviews, you know, all of the ways that you can tell your story, and you have to look very carefully in the interviews to find, you know, how to shift topics. What are the topics that people want to talk about? And, you know, who should you bring in afterwards? So it seems to me more like editing a video documentary almost than editing a radio feature. So it's difficult. You could imagine they have to transcribe everything. Like they have to have written out what everybody said so that they can go through those and kind of take a first edit and say, well, what if we have this and then this and then this, and then do a rough edit and see how that plays and build the story up like that. At least this is what they say in their 3-day seminar. So if you're interested in this type of production, keep an eye out on their website. They'll announce when they do it. They don't do it very often, but the Kitchen Sisters, let's see if they have any, let's see, episodes, stories about teaching. Okay. Workshops. Oh, they have interns as well. So teaching. So they do teach at the Graduate School of Journalism, UC Berkeley, which is a hard school to get into. But they do these 3-day seminars. Oh, they don't have one announced, but they live in North Beach, I think, and they usually do them around there. So keep your eyes open for that. That would be, you know, if you're interested in this. But otherwise, you know, it just, to me, it starts to show some other potential that longer form radio stories have. It just takes a lot longer than, you know, we would ever have to produce something like this. But I'm just really impressed by them. And they have a podcast. So they've taken all of the stuff they did for radio, which is like about 7 minutes long, and they've created new material before and after it to turn it all into podcasts that they can distribute themselves, because podcasting is a new thing. So, but I just wanted to play you what they did for the radio. So I'm glad you seem to enjoy that and find, you know, some interesting stuff in that. So that was Profile of the Homobiles by the Kitchen Sisters. So we need to finish up on our chapter, which was about reporting basics. That's something we should do. And So what was interesting about this chapter to me was that it unlike general ideas about reporting, it broke it down to how to cover events and how to cover how to do a profile. So the two things that I asked you basically to prepare as your sort of A story and B story, and I know you've already gone in and either you're finished or you're very far along in your reporting for the story that you finally took. But it was interesting just to run through their advice about events. So they break down events into different types of events that you would cover. They talk about the importance of being prepared before going to the event. So finding out, if this is part of a series of meetings on a particular topic, looking into either media accounts of this story, like has the Chronicle reported on it, has a local newspaper reported on it, that you can find out more about, what the lead up to this event has been. So you want to do your prep that way. You want to know who's there, hopefully. And sometimes the website, if it's a meeting put on by an organization, they'll have a website which will also have minutes of past meetings. So that's another way that you can catch up on, sort of institutional meetings. Like if you wanted to go to the Board of Governors, meeting here and to report on an issue, you could find out about, past meetings by looking on the website, and the minutes of the meetings will be up there. And you might see in comments people who had already spoken on an issue, and you might look for them or search them out. So that could be useful as well. So some events, breaking news events, will typically be organized, let's say, by the fire department, police department, city hall, something like that. They're going to have a news conference as a type of event. Speeches, you will sometimes be sent out to record and find the most important part of the speech. Meetings, as we've covered, could be community meetings, could be institutional, like school meetings. So those are important. So news conferences, to me, this is typically where there's going to be an event. If it's going to break any news, it may be an announcement at a news conference. So we spoke more in depth about this, but you'll often go to a news conference and you've got lots of other media there, and you get sort of prepackaged news. So we talked about prep, seeking background, the most important stuff. How to cover the event. Finding the core of the event is really, you got to think in advance as to what this is really. Is this decisive? Is this event going to, be important and lead to a particular decision or repercussion? Or is it like a place for people to vent about what they're really angry about because of something that's happened recently? So you need to think through the core of the event, so that if you know that this is more like kind of a reaction event where people are upset about something, you want to cover people. You want to be really available to get people on tape who are upset or responding to the event. On the other hand, if this is an event which is some key policy decisions have been made, maybe I don't know, the chancellor is talking about budget cuts that are going to cut the number of classes we have in school or something like that, then you're going to want to first off get that's going to be the core of your story, and then after that ask like what departments are likely to get cut, which students are likely to get impacted, and then move on from there. To look outside the lines means, especially if you're at a press conference, the material has usually been, curated in advance, let's say. It's being pulled together for you. There may be a certain spin around it. So watch out for that. The other thing is, because those are covered by so many media, sometimes the impressive story is the one that can find some angle on it that nobody else is covering. So that could be another idea of thinking about outside the lines is there somebody affected by this that is no one's considering? You know, can you think that through? So always try to think about that. It's not just, you know, anyone can go and take the information and summarize it and report it. But can someone, you know, what's more impressive is if you can think, okay, what are they not telling me? Or who are we not considering that's important in this news? So that's interesting. Post-event interviews, that's very often where, you know, you can get more information than what was just provided right away. So you want to make sure that you're available after the fact. So again, under pressure that journalists are under, you may often just think, okay, I'm going to drop in for the first 25 minutes. The most important people will have finished speaking, and then I can get out and go on to the next thing that I need to do. But you should plan to maybe stay the whole time, because it's important to talk to people afterwards to get their reactions, you know? Or even to clarify with people. Like, if you're not there, you can't get to them. You might try to phone them up, but it's not going to be as authentic or as useful. Secondary sources. So I think this is an error. You know, members of the public who protested an event are actually primary sources. They were actually there. So, however, you know, it's always important to talk to people who are, you know, not just those who are, for instance, putting on the farmers market, but those who are, you know, buying the food, but those who are, you know, working at the farmers market and what this means to them. So keep that in mind. Check your facts. We talked about this. Facts and contact information, important for being able to follow up. And also, we talked just last class about if you misspell a name, people are going to wonder, what else have you got wrong? So you want to be really clear about it all. Eric, how did your event go? Were you able to get some good stuff?
Yeah, so I was able to talk to Zoe Salnov, who's a producer of a short film called Hatch. And it's about a kid growing up in South Central LA, and he lives there, but he goes to the Valley to go play baseball because where he lives, there's not much opportunity for like scholarships and all that. And so I started out doing a feature on the Bernal Heights, Best of Bernal. That's what the name of the event is. But after interviewing her, I kind of wanted to profile her more because she was much more interesting than the whole event itself. And so, yeah, I got to ask her some good questions. And her movie actually casted a gentleman named Dante Brown, who's on Lethal Weapon right now on Fox, and Sherry Shepherd also. So I got a lot of good details about the production of her movie, and she won the Spirit of Bernal Award. So I kind of made my piece about the Spirit of Bernal.
Sweet.
Yeah. It was cool talking to her.
I bet it was, and it sounds like a great project that she worked on too. Right? Yeah, that's really good. I mean, isn't that fantastic that first of all you're able to talk to like somebody who wound up winning the award, you know, and also that had such a cool project. Mm-hmm. Ron, did you want to ask? You look like you wanted to ask Eric a question or something, but maybe you didn't.
No, I was impressed that you went to an event. And were you planning on interviewing her at all?
Yeah, I emailed her maybe like 5 days to a week back, and she got back to me maybe 2 days ago.
Okay.
And so we planned it. I was able to ask her the question before the event because she got there in time. And she was there with her mom. She's from Berkeley. She goes to USC now, so she's doing a lot of traveling. She's a little tired, but she didn't seem to mind, so got to talk to her.
Yeah, it's underneath you guys that you when you went to an event, you talked like almost everybody, and you still just had to choose that one person to interview.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe it's a way I should be going about it if I ever do decide to do an event, if I could ever find one.
Well, she inspired me the most, or her story, her movie resonated with me the most. And so I guess that got me writing about it more.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thanks, Eric. I'm glad you came up with such good stuff. That's really cool. Yeah. Well, Ron, if you know, just keep on plugging away at it. Did George ever get back to you?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna look. Yeah, if I don't get anything, maybe around tomorrow. I mean, I'm still looking for other events to like cover or even see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, keep on it. You know, but hopefully it'll be something that you find. You know, as like, it's great that Eric found something compelling. You know, so keep going. Keep going. And yeah. And Fran, how did all your stuff work out?
So I was trying to get in touch with her, and I sent her a text. So I'm hoping, because every time I've seen her, it's always been at 10 p.m. in the evening. So I don't know, you know, if she leaves super early and then she's home super late, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm waiting to hear back from her.
Okay.
Because I really want to talk to her about this, because I really like the idea of what she's doing. I mean, I like my neighbor too, the cow guy, but I think this is, I want to do this one.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
There's a little bit more importance to it in a sense. So.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a very attractive topic. Well, hopefully you can get, you know, next week we're in midterm, so there's really nothing much happening except preparing for the exam and having the exam. So on Tuesday we're gonna, you know, people are gonna read back their scripts a little bit. We're all meeting up on Tuesday for that read back, and we'll talk about, you know, the next leg of the reporting assignment, like what's coming up next. And we'll, you know, I'll just make sure everybody totally understands how the exam is going to work. And there's already the review materials, which are out here. So that I should show everybody. So that's what we're going to do on Tuesday. So Fran, just to finish that that thought. Sorry. You know, next week will be kind of downtime too. So if apart from the exam, which is very important to a lot of people, but in terms of our writing and reporting, you know, there's more time to catch up basically next week on this. Because the next thing I'm going to ask you to do going forward is to pick up the same story, but consider how you would do it for television. So we'll talk about that a little bit on Tuesday, and then once we come back from midterm, we'll get into that. You know, so writing to tape, like basically writing for TV, and we'll talk about different types of TV stories and stuff. So here's the midterm exam review page. So today's Thursday, so the exam is in a week. And so there is some information down here to review. And then there are these quizzes about each of the chapters that we've read. And so these quizzes are, you know, they contain questions that are similar or even identical to some that are on the exam. And the exam is multiple choice, true, false. And it's all going to be done online. So unless you don't trust the computer and want to come in on Thursday, if I know that in advance, you can write it in person on Thursday if you want. But typically I'd say, you know, do the exam. No one's required to be here for the exam. But if you want, I'll print copies, you can do it here. So my suggestion to, you know, do some web quizzes over the weekend. You have the web quizzes about those chapters, and in the modules you have, you know, all of the PowerPoints like this. You have access to all of these. If you want to, you know, go through them and review, like, oh, that question was on the exam, I got it wrong, I wonder why, you know, on these quizzes. So, and in fact, we can do the quiz for Chapter 8 today before we're done, just to see what kind of questions would be asked on, you know, the content we've been talking about this week. So let's take a look. And let's see on chat. Got it for class change. Okay. Thanks, Amanda. Pointer Sisters and Gloria Gaynor for music. Okay, this is classics for drag shows. Ah, good point. Very good point. Katerina is saying, some of that entertaining music was also really, really appropriate for the drag queen thing. But she thought there was too much background that distracted from the content in the beginning. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. Wow, people liked it. Wow. And hello to everybody. Jorge, Randia. Hi. Sorry, I should really, I want to get a second computer to just have chat open all the time, just to integrate people. Well, let's continue on with more of those exciting slides. Where are they? There they go. This is, well, just a good point in that for our class, I ask you to do one story, and then you've reported it for radio, and we're gonna go eventually do a television script version for it, and then we're gonna do a web version of the television script. So you'll be reporting on the same story for those 3 assignments. Typically, to bring this back to the working world, you might get an assignment like this on a Monday and have to, on a Tuesday, have your interviews set and go out and capture the material necessary. For a feature like this, probably a 3-day timeline would be normal, So after you got all your material, you'd be logging just the important parts of it and then edit it on the 3rd day and maybe, have it all pulled together by the end of the 3rd day. I worked on a show that was a weekly show, and we were all freelancers. We were just basically pitching our own ideas, but of course, eventually you'd have a relationship. It wasn't like, you'd go without work for a week, but you'd pitch the story like on Monday, and then, usually by Wednesday afternoon, they had booked you into an edit to actually to do the edit with. In this day, at that time, video editing systems were, desktop video existed, but you didn't use it in a professional context. So I would go and sit with an editor, and they usually had great ideas actually about how to fix everything. It was always thrilling. You'd go in and you'd know, I don't know what's going to go here or something like that. And the editor, who did this all day long with a bunch of different people, was actually like really skilled at just saying, well, why don't you just move this part here and do that? And it's like, oh, thank you, It's like, what do you drink? I need to bring you a bottle at Christmas or something. It was pretty cool. Anyhow, so that was a type of show which was, for me, it was like a kind of cultural affairs show. It was a weekly thing, which was just like what's going on in town, that, of cultural events and stuff. Working reporters still sometimes work on the print media model, which is reporters have beats. You've all heard about beats. What they mean is that you develop a particular expertise and group of contacts based on what you do. So, for Eric, he might become an expert, in kind of cultural events here in the Bay Area. He'd get to know, the directors of all the film festivals, a lot of the local, creative people, and just so on. So your knowledge eventually grows out till you know a lot of people that you can call for comment or, just kind of monitor with them what's going on, which, especially in the cultural area, can be really a fun way to live life in some ways. Like it can really, there are other beats, education's a beat, local politics is a beat. Crime, so police and court coverage these are also religious information, I guess. I mean, I'm so kind of unaware of it all. But so as you can see, these are all kind of specific areas where you could develop contacts and expertise. Now, newspapers still have people on beats, although they've laid off a lot of staff and so reporters. So maybe the beats, are less people covering them. You might be the only person working on a particular beat, which is terrible pressure on you, because if things heat up, you'll have a lot of work. Maybe they'll bring people in to help you. Maybe they won't. The Times just caught a lot of flack for having an opinion reporter come in and do some support work on the Brett Kavanaugh story, the Supreme Court Justice story. So they brought in an opinion writer who'd been to Yale around the same time as Kavanaugh. And she called a few people she knew to get some information about his drinking while he was in school. And then they got dinged because they'd put an opinion writer doing factual reporting. I was like, oh, you're just so biased, right? It's kind of silly, but that's part of the politics of it, I guess. So beats are important. In broadcast, you'll at a TV station, you may have a dozen reporters with informal beats. Some of them may be, better at certain things, but it also depends on the time of day that you work. Like if you're coming in at 4 a.m., you're going to cover a lot of the police stories because that's typically when the desk calls in, like what happened last night. Early in the day, you do a lot of police stories. So if you come in early in the day, then you're probably going to write those kinds of stories. For reporters who go out, and cover over, they're usually, there may be some with a business focus, but otherwise everyone's expected to do just about everything. So that's kind of the way it works. Geographic beats. Yeah, I guess, there are some reporters who are, better at covering some parts of the area than others, I guess. Conceptual beats. Yeah, people who are more skilled at talking about, especially investigative reporting. Data-driven journalism is a big thing. We can get into it later. When we get into the web reporting, it's interesting, like what kinds of data-driven stories are out there. Covering a beat, I think we want to jump over this stuff and get into the features talk. Covering a beat, just, typically from our department, people who are interested in writing for electronic media and really ambitious may go to a smaller market. Like we had a great student who, I think her first job was in Montana after leaving San Francisco State. And, it's just information about like, what do you do when you set up? In the first couple of weeks, you have to start, you got to start calling around all of the different, if you're covering the police force, you better call around and set up a time to visit with the, police chief and stuff and get to know people and just build credibility so that you can call and find out. Anyhow, features. So this could be, well, actually, let's just run through a couple of slides. I think the challenge, and this is a challenge that Eric has just kind of solved for himself with his own passion and interest, which is really cool because that's the way it should work, is, he started off covering a festival and he's found, an interesting person with a great, film idea that connects with him. So, you're being led, to the main assertion of your piece, which is finally here's an important documentary from a young documentarian being honored in a local festival. There you go. There's your main assertion. Versus when you just started out, which is kind of like, I want to go to the festival. Am I going to, talk to, like how it was put together? Maybe talk to some of the creative people. It's not yet a story. It's kind of a topic. It's the festival. But when you get this, you got the story. That's your main assertion. Basically, will hopefully become clear to you through your own interest. But sometimes you have to force it. Competing stories. See if there are other stories out there on your topic and determine how this one is going to be different. So if your passion fails you, if it's not like, yeah, I want to write about this aspect, then this is true. Ask yourself, well, what hasn't been covered already? What's an original tack? So that's another alternative. It's like, okay, I don't really know why I'm here, but maybe I should be here in order to report on something that no one else has. So that's good advice. Profile writing. And so a lot of us are engaged in this. The personality profile helps you explore the life of an interesting person and explain to your readers how the individual arrived at this point in life. So, Ron, for instance, if you do connect with George and he has a real interesting biography. He's worked at the highest levels of, film sound editing and stuff. And here he is spending his time with us here at City College. We're super lucky to have somebody like that. And he also seems to be a person, of a lot of integrity. And so I'd certainly be interested in learning more about, how he managed to do all that and get to, the point here where he's kind of giving back and sharing with students all that he knows and that he's done. So that's why I thought of George as being a great potential profile. And I was thinking the textbook also gives us some suggestions of profiles. Whoa, my God, this one is an hour long. Well, we can't, as much as I like playing a video from time to time, we can't do that. Well, this would, I guess, be the deep dive profile on Francis Coppola, but that's not an option to us. I didn't realize it was going to be an hour-long thing. You could all check it out at home. Okay, here's a sad thing that's shorter, but I'd like to listen to this. It's also audio only. Let's make sure it actually plays through this browser. Can we hear it? I think I might.
Red lipstick, her hair streaked with.
Okay. So, I mean, this is inherently sad. It's an obituary, right? And that is interesting in that obituaries are also profiles in a way. And there are, on big newspapers, there are professional obituary writers, and I doubt any of us would wind up doing that kind of work. But it gives a particular context to a profile. So let's have a listen to this and see how it kind of compares to a profile.
The first thing you notice in the obituary for Molly Alice Parks is her photo. She's young, bright red lipstick, her hair streaked with pink and teal. Molly Parks died last Thursday in Manchester, New Hampshire. She was 24. And what's most remarkable in that obituary is her family's candor in revealing how she died, a heroin overdose. We reached Molly's father, Tom Parks, at his home in Saco, Maine today to talk about that decision to go public with her cause of death and her history of addiction. We began by talking about Molly's passions, reading, playing the piano, and drawing, especially gowns.
She played dress up her whole life. I mean, she'd go to thrift shops and find nice dresses, get them for nothing, and her and her friends would dress even if they stayed in the house. She never lost her passion for anything, believe it or not. I mean, I think that addicts withdraw completely into themselves, and that wasn't Molly. She loved her friends, she loved us, she loved life. Just, the addiction was too much. She couldn't fight it off. And a friend of hers had told us that once she got out of the last rehab, which was the third one in 8 months, that she wasn't out for a week and a half or so, 2 weeks, and her dealer was calling her, texting her, bugging her. I always thought she was a strong kid, but she wasn't that strong.
When it came time to write the obituary for your daughter, for Molly, how did you decide to go public with the cause being a heroin overdose?
Well, I read papers. Old school enough so that I still read papers. And I've seen a lot of obituaries, and you see 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, and they all have sudden deaths. But that doesn't really happen to 20 and 30 and 40-somethings. There's no sudden death for them. It's either suicide, and I understand people don't want to put that, or drug overdoses, but the life of me, I can't figure out why somebody wouldn't want to put that in an obituary. Because if you just keep sweeping it under the carpet, nobody's going to figure it out.
The idea being that by being open about it, by being public about it, not sweeping it under the carpet, as you put it, that it would help other people. It would help this.
That's what I was hoping. It would help somebody, somewhere, one person. That's all we wanted, and that's what we talked about. If it helps one person to see that somebody else died of the same thing, then the answer, it will take care of things. You know what I mean?
I've been looking through your Facebook page, Mr. Parks, and was really struck by what you posted. I think the morning after you found out that Molly had died, you said she tried to fight addiction in her own way, and last night her fight came to an end in a bathroom of a restaurant with a needle of heroin. And I think this was the restaurant where she was working at the time.
It was. It took me an hour to write that. It's not that long. But the reason that it was hard to write was because I couldn't see the screen or the keyboard because I was trying so hard. After I'd written it, I was kind of happy with the way it read because I knew that it was the truth. I didn't want to hide behind a cloak of, sudden death. I wanted it to be transparent and blunt. People need to know. There's an epidemic. It's rampant. People are getting a hold of heroin and they're dying regularly.
As you saw Molly struggle over the years with addiction, in and out of rehab several times, another near fatal overdose before, did she talk to you about it? I mean, what did you try to tell her to help her through this?
We tried everything. I mean, we tried being nice, we tried being mean, we tried withholding, we tried giving extra, you know what I mean? When it's your own child, you're going to try anything you can to get them better. She knew that we knew, you know what I mean? And she wouldn't come out and say, oh yeah, I've been using all week. But if you asked her straight out, she'd say, well, I've been trying my best. And she knew she had an addiction. She knew she was struggling. And, I don't know if you know anybody or whatever, anybody who has anybody that's ever dealt with it, but it's an addiction that has a pretty strong hold on people. I mean, you go from being a person that can live every day without it, and then all of a sudden, you need it.
Well, Mr. Parks, thank you so much for talking with us and for telling us about your daughter, Molly.
Thank you very much.
That's Tom Parks of Saco, Maine. We were talking about his daughter, Molly Parks, who died last Thursday of a heroin overdose. She was 24 years old.
Gosh, well, I'm terrified. What do you guys think?
At first I thought it was that, it's the same girl from that video I saw up on Instagram about a week ago.
Is that right?
No, I thought it was. The way they described how she died in the restroom, it's like a different girl.
Okay.
I remember seeing this video of the same thing with this other girl, and she's in the hospital bed, and her mom was filming it on Instagram, alerting people like, this is what happens when you're on heroin.
Oh my God. Okay. So, right, similar wish, just to inform everybody, like, this is really bad. Okay.
I know they don't want to leave on that note.
Oh, yeah. That's a very skilled interviewer, I think, who's able to, talk to somebody who's hurting that badly and, just help them bring out, what they want to say in a context where they know they've probably got a 5-minute segment and they've got to, do it live and do it on time and still get something compelling as that. My gosh. Okay. So we're back to Francis Coppola. No, where are we? We're back on to just covering how much there is on profile here to help us once we're talking about it.
So that was like, well, I guess, so it was a profile about the obituary? Is that how you would do it?
I mean, I guess it's true, Eric. It's kind of one step removed, right? So it's it's profiling the young woman, but through her dad's having written an obituary about it. So I guess it's it's pretty powerful, but it's also not as direct as maybe being able to talk to someone who was alive, who you would want to talk about similar stuff. Yeah. Well, interesting point. I mean, there's so few of us here today, but everyone did a face-to-face interview, right? Okay, yeah. It'll be interesting. I'll try to remember to ask on Tuesday if anybody worked over the phone or through email or even social media. We said those were options. As I said, it's always preferable to meet with someone in person, but if you can't, those other options can be usable. Again, if we were recording for broadcast, we definitely need to have someone over the phone to record their voice over the phone. But it can be handled through a variety of different media. It's just better that you actually interview. You want to take the time to get back to your source at least one time after an initial interview. I mean, that could be to clarify stuff, or it could just be to see, what's going on with them now. So this is not obligatory. I don't require it. I guess it's good advice just to find out, for instance, where the filmmaker is, before you actually publish this. But, observation. So this is just the idea that when you do get to conduct a profile in person, you can use those kinds of observed details to tell us a little bit more about their character, perhaps. So again, if radio is a great medium for helping us to create a visualization of what we're actually hearing, it can help if you were actually there. So we met in their cluttered office, or cats were walking around her feet while she was telling us her story, or all of these little details which actually those are the things that give us a visual picture, especially in the type of profile we do where it's mostly us talking. So that's good and interesting. So even if you did the interview a while back, try to just in your mind's eye try to remember what they were wearing, how what their posture was like, what cues did you have about the person themselves or in the environment around them, like that you could actually use just ever so briefly to create a little picture in our minds about the actions and stuff. I mean, sometimes when you're a common thing that we would do for television anyway is we would put the interview into action. So we were, there's just endless talking heads, like so many, like just somebody sitting there talking. But if you can get them doing something with their hands, sometimes you need a lot of material that you can cut because they're distracted in a way, but also you get a more dynamic interaction with them. So this also recommends, if you can see how somebody interacts with other people, that can give you a sense, of how they are. So again, make into a profile, you might mention, we were interrupted by their 3-year-old daughter, and she gave her a kiss and sent her on her way or something. These are interactions that tell a lot about people. Localizations, okay, we're not, do we want to keep on with this or do the web? We should do the web quiz. So just on this last slide. Very often in broadcasting, you will localize a story which has a broader impact. Most professional news organizations have subscriptions to the wire services. They get a lot of kind of national news, but you working in a local station will want to make that relevant to your audience. And so a pretty common practice is to take a lot of stuff from the wire, but then find somebody locally who's affected or involved in this story and talk to them. And so what you wind up with is a localized story. So what you're often looking for at that point is you're looking for people who have some kind of local tie-in to a national story. And there is a video on this which is pretty decent. Let's get to that, not today, but next time. So let's just try out the web quiz for the chapter we've just been on, and let's have a look and see how it is. If this is going to help us, I hope I have the right link. So reporting on a commencement address is an example of covering what? Well, a commencement address, it's not breaking news, right? It's not a meeting which has a bunch of people. So it's probably more like a speech, right? So let's say, oh, this only gives us the answers at the end? Oh dear, okay. All right, well, we'll see how we do. Let's debate here. Reporting on a city council meeting is an example of covering what?
News conference.
Think so? Or maybe a meeting. A meeting, right? So let's take meeting. Let's go to next on the meeting. Next question. Let's see here. Whoa. Reporting on a new product introduction during an organized event for media at a corporate headquarters. So Apple rolling out a new watch, that would be, what would that be? We were left with either breaking news or news conference.
Breaking news?
I would say news.
I think it's news conference because breaking news would probably...
Is something unscheduled?
Yes, yeah. Exactly, Fran. So let's say news conference here. Next question. When it comes to preparing for an event, it can be helpful to do all of these. So this is you, the reporter. How are you going to prepare? Except what? Ignore other reporters who have attended these events before. Check out the physical layout of the room. So that makes, good sense. So you know where you're going to set up your camera or your recorder or stuff. Find out who is involved. Obviously, you're going to want to find out a little bit about them before. Contact the event coordinator, so you've got, permission and they know you're coming. So really, I think it has to be ignore the reporters who attended these events before. So that's kind of silly, but I think that was easy to get. All right, next question. Breaking news events are among the most something stories for reporters to cover. Simplest, easy, difficult? Minimal? What'd you think?
Depends on the person covering.
Well, but you yourself said breaking news is kind of unscheduled. You don't really know what's going on.
That would be difficult.
Yeah, I think it's probably difficult.
Because it's sudden. You're not even prepared for that.
It's developing as you try to report. So I wish these things would answer like right away. Most of these answer right away. Okay, at which type of event your job as a reporter is to sit in as a substitute for your readers and distill for them what happened. So what would you think? Let's think here. Well, breaking news, your reader's not likely to ever be present or sitting in there, so I wouldn't say breaking news.
I think news conferences.
You want to try a news conference? Let's try a news conference and see. I think it's either a news conference or a meeting. Because at a meeting, a whole bunch of things could happen. So the distillation would be necessary just to say what happened. Something can include some of the background you gathered, any quotes you got from sources prior to the event, and optional lead elements based on the outcome of the event. So when they say optional lead elements, what they mean is, potential leads for a story. As you go in, you're thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to start this story by saying, today the city council voted to, further reduce the amount of services that we give. So those would be your optional leads. So, all right, maybe shell information, okay, which we didn't, it must be in one of the last slides or something. So a shell is basically, before you go do the story, the shell is like how you think you're going to write the story when you come out of it at the end. So the shell is it's your backup. It makes you feel like secure going forward. That okay, probably this is what's going to happen. Probably this is what's going to be said. And I know I'm going to put this in, and I know that my lead is probably this. Now you get there, and very often your shell is useful. You can use most of it or all of it. Once in a while, you got to completely chuck it out the window because something happens. That's like breaking news, basically, is like you don't know what's going to happen. And so then you don't have a shell, which is part of what makes it more difficult.
So is it sort of like an outline?
Yeah, in a way, but it has these very specific stuff in the sense that, so you got some sources prior to the event. You didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but you got some quotes that you think you can use. You've got a lead, which you think is going to be good. So yeah, it's like having, if you had to write the story before it actually happened, you could actually write this story. It would be BS because the event didn't really happen, right? But it was like all that you could get enough in advance to write the story. So that's a shell, which often we'll throw it away. My God, we're already past time, guys. So I'm gonna say shell there, and I'm gonna skip the others so we can just look at our answers at least. And then this is pretty clunky. Most of the others they have you can get the answers like right away. Let's just see what we got. Speeches often contain multiple points of view. No way, because there's one person speaking. And okay. Come on. This is so slow. There might be another link that I could use or something. Okay, finally. Let's see how we did now. You better answer this. We got 40% on a number of questions. So our first one was correct. A commencement address is an example of a speech, during a speech. City council meeting is an example of covering a meeting. Well, I mean, it already says meeting, so we should have got that one, and we did. Good for us. Reporting a new product introduction, we said it was a news conference, so that's true. It's all organized with a bunch of different media there. When it comes to preparing for an event, it can be helpful to do everything except ignore the reporters because you want to actually read them and know what they wrote before. Breaking news events are the most difficult to cover. We got that right. So the one we got wrong of the one that we tried was at which type of event where you sit in and you distill for them what happened. It was actually a meeting. It wasn't a news conference. So this is because all kinds of people speak about all kinds of stuff at the meetings. So your job is to kind of, say, well, what actually happened there? Well, after all the goddamn 3 hours of debate and everything, the college decided to create a working group to study the issue. You know what I mean? So that would be your summary of 3 hours of meeting talk. And then we got the shell information question correct. So a shell is background information, quotes from sources prior to the event, optional leads. All of that is preparation so that when you do go to the event, you're kind of ready for what you expected to write really quickly afterwards, which is something you have to do. Okay, cool. Well, we'll see you Tuesday. And but do, if you have time, practice these quizzes. Most of them you get the answer right away after you answer. You get correction right away after you answer. It's much more interactive. I don't know why that one is different. I gotta check it. Thanks, guys, and good news that stories are coming on. And for those who are still struggling to get the reporting, hang in there. Try to get it done as fast as you can so you can